If we claim that the US dollar is no longer the reserve and worldwide currency, it may be difficult to accept, but the fact has changed. The Chinese yuan is now becoming a worldwide currency, with numerous nations adopting it for commerce. This is due to BRICS, whose founding countries are increasingly adopting the Chinese yuan for cross-border transactions. In other words, nations are giving up the dollar to avoid penalties. This confirms U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen's claim that sanctions are driving de-dollarization. We just learned that the Chinese yuan has surpassed the U.S. dollar in terms of trading volume by 2.5%. China and Russia, the two most crucial BRICS members, have come together to make de-dollarization a reality. What does that signify? And does it mark the formal demise of the U.S. dollar? In this video, we'll discover out. So, what's happened? China and Russia, however, have devised a master strategy to replace the dollar by setting a live example for the rest of the globe. China has made enormous efforts to encourage the use of the Chinese yuan in international commerce, notably in Russia, where the yuan has surpassed the US dollar as the most widely traded currency. The reason Russia was picked to demonstrate how the yuan can be used for all types of commerce is to demonstrate how sanctioned nations in the West may continue to trade if they choose the yuan over the USD. Under Xi Jinping's leadership, China has been tenacious in convincing Russia to utilize the yuan in all commercial dealings. As a result, many developing nations increasingly undertake transactions with Russia in Russian rubles. What BRICS now has to do is broaden this policy to include all of its member nations, as well as those that trade with them. Given China's position as the world's top exporter, all countries will be urged to utilize the Chinese yuan to settle payments. After the United States placed economic sanctions on Russia in February 2022, the country began completely accepting the Chinese yuan for payment. Since then, additional emerging countries, notably BRICS members India and Brazil, have begun to use the yuan for trade, particularly for commodities such as crude oil. For example, India saved $7 billion in currency conversion costs by purchasing oil at a lower price using the yuan rather than the US dollar. From 2023 to 2024, the Chinese yuan accounted for 42% of all foreign transactions launched in Russia, with the US dollar accounting for 39.5% of all cross-border settlements. This reflects a 2.5% decrease in the use of the US dollar, making the yuan the most widely used currency in Russia in 2023 and 2024. China and Russia are driving the global de-dollarization effort. This method is attractive to emerging countries because it supports their currencies and domestic economies. According to Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Overchuk, around 92% of commercial transactions between Russia and China currently take place in Russian rubles and Chinese yuan. Overchuk stated at the BOA Forum for Asia in Henan Province that Russia intends to strengthen financial links with other nations and replace the U.S. currency in international commerce to maintain the stability and security of local currencies. Russian President Vladimir Putin said in July 2023 that rubles and yuan accounted for more than 80% of all commerce between Russia and China. Bilateral commerce between China and Russia continues to grow, reaching $240.1 billion in 2023, a 26.3% rise over the previous year, with energy being a main driver. But what about the usage of the Chinese yuan in foreign trade throughout the globe? Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more videos on global geopolitics, the economy, and the changing landscape. Let us proceed immediately. Chinese yuan utilization in foreign commerce reached an all-time high in July 2024. The Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication, SWIFT, the world's biggest interbank communication service, confirmed this. It said the yuan remained the fourth most traded currency last month, with its proportion of global transactions rising to 4.74%, from 4.61% in June. This was the sixth consecutive month in which the yuan's share remained above 4%. SWIFT payment data is an important indicator of a currency's worldwide status, as is its frequency of usage in foreign exchange markets, commodities trade, and inclusion in government foreign reserves. SWIFT data also showed that the value of yuan transactions increased by 13.4% compared to June, exceeding the 10.3% growth reported for all currencies combined. Standard Chartered's Renminbi Globalization Index, which monitors the yuan's worldwide use, has continued its rise this year following a significant 33% growth in 2023, in line with SWIFT statistics. Interestingly, when SWIFT began tracking the yuan's use in 2010, it accounted for less than 0.1% of worldwide settlements. Since then, the yuan has increased dramatically. In trade finance, the yuan ranked second with a 6% market share, outperforming the euro's 5.8%. As nations in the global south want to reduce their reliance on the US dollar amid escalating geopolitical tensions, the yuan is well positioned to extend its global role. The data proves this. According to People's Bank of China research on the internationalization of the yuan, cross-border yuan transactions and payments will amount to 52.3 trillion yuan, or 7.2 trillion USD, up 24.2%, year-on-year in 2023. For China's cross-border trading products, the share of transactions settled in yuan increased to 25% in 2023, up 7 percentage points from 2022. According to Zhu Hexin, a deputy governor of the People's Bank of China, approximately 30% of such transactions took place in yuan during the first quarter of this year. But what exactly is China doing to make the Chinese yuan a worldwide currency? No country would adopt the yuan unless China utilized it as its primary trading currency. As a result, in March, the Chinese yuan overtook the US dollar as the most commonly utilized currency for cross-border transactions in China. According to figures from the State Administration of Foreign Exchange, cross-border yuan transfers and receipts reached a record $549.9 billion in March, up from $434.5 billion in February. The yuan accounted for 48.4% of all cross-border transactions, with the dollar's portion dropping to 46.7% from 48.6% the previous month. These numbers include both current and capital account transactions. By May of this year, the yuan's share had risen to 53%, while the US dollar's stake had fallen to 43%, the euro to 2%, and the Hong Kong dollar to 1%. China reports that yuan-denominated cross-border transactions totaled 14.6 trillion yuan in the first quarter of the year. About 20% of these transactions were goods commerce, 5% were services and other current account items, and 15% were direct investments. The yuan has also become more widely used in China's overseas commerce, accounting for 28% of total goods trade this year. Furthermore, numerous emerging economies, including Brazil, Argentina, Iraq, and Pakistan, have shown a readiness to accept yuan payments in trade with China. According to media sources, Saudi Arabia is considering utilizing the yuan to trade oil with China. Other nations have allegedly resorted to yuan payments with Russian firms to avoid Western sanctions. You should be aware that not all foreign payments are handled through SWIFT. The network believes that around 80% of worldwide payments pass via it. In principle, yuan transfers may be made outside of the SWIFT system via China's own cross-border international payment system, CIPS. Furthermore, capital flows to and from China have expanded, notably since the integration of China's domestic stock and bond markets with Hong Kong, as well as the inclusion of yuan-denominated assets in international indexes. Foreign investors owned 4.2 trillion yuan in mainland Chinese debt instruments at the end of May, up 32% over the previous year. Panda bonds, which are yuan-denominated bonds issued by foreign firms in mainland China, have surged since last year. By the end of 2022, capital restrictions had loosened, allowing the overseas transfer of funds obtained from Panda bond issuance under certain restrictions. Panda bonds' appeal stems in part from their relative affordability, with nominal interest rates in China much lower than in the United States. Between January and May, Panda bonds worth 81 billion yuan, or $11 billion, were issued in the interbank market, increasing the entire amount of Panda bonds to roughly 240 billion yuan, up from 195 billion yuan at the end of 2023. All of this points to the Chinese yuan becoming the next major international currency. It's growing increasingly enticing, allowing countries to avoid penalties while simultaneously encouraging them to adopt their currency. What are your thoughts? How long would it take for every country in the world to utilize the Chinese yuan instead of the dollar for trade? Isn't it true that de-dollarization is proceeding at a rapid speed and the dollar's demise is imminent? Share your opinions on the US dollar's value and worldwide issues in the comments box below now that it is no longer a reserve currency. Would you want to see more videos like this one? If so, please subscribe to our channel and hit the bell symbol next to it.